Pounders, we're back. And we got some good news today. Dalvin Cook is not going to be on Minnesota. What's this mean for Madison? I'd rather take my correlation on this bet on the back end with McBride. We'll go over that in a little bit as we get through my top values for rounds 1 through 9 and a little bit of background. Last year I did around 160, not too many tournament drafts, and we had a 36% advance rate. It's mostly a cash game player last year, and that was very positive. So very happy about that. And I hope you join us in our Discord where we're dropping these nuggets, where we're dropping our free draft guide for the subscribers, as well as all the smartest people on Twitter dropping best ball facts, such as this person right here who just made a spreadsheet for everyone to see on the starting ADPs for BBM. You can see Madison was going at pick 106 when the BBM tournament opened. Kind of important to know, in my opinion. We also have just a lot of nuggets in here, a lot of nuggets. I hope you join us. The link is in the description there. And let's bring it up the ADPs. And we'll start with the first round, favorite values. Now, you're going to want to spread your exposures in this round all over the place, but the one glaring person I see is Travis Kelce at pick 6. And I think pick 6 and 7 are actually the grossest ADPs for this first round. Every time I see 6 or 7, I just don't love it. I've been doing some different stuff with 6 and 7, like pulling Lamb to the 6 or 7 spot and then going in making a slight reach on Pollard. It's the only way you can get both Dallas pass catchers. I think that's interesting. You can do some stuff with AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, and maybe getting a fallen Jalen Hurts. I think that's interesting as well for the double there. But I'm going Jefferson, I'm going Chase, and then I have Kupp in front of CMC. And then CMC and Hill, I'm kind of trading off at that 4 and 5 spot personally. But yeah, round 1, you kind of want to spread your exposure. Austin Eckler is going to be ahead of Bijan. And we called this months ago. Eckler was the number 1 overall scoring player in half-point PPR last year over Justin Jefferson. There's no reason Eckler should be going behind the rookie here in Atlanta. Yes, he's going to have an unbelievable season pending health, but still, it's Eckler, guys, and he's returning to the Chargers. This is why his ADP is going to slowly climb. And honestly, for tournament play, I don't mind bumping AJ Brown ahead of Diggs. I think that's also another sharp play. And in tournaments, sure, maybe Eckler in front of Diggs as well, but Brown over Eckler, in my opinion, and then put Kelce somewhere in between. I'm selecting Kelce at pick 8 right now otherwise I'll end up with none. And you don't want that, because even if they're a bad value, and the reason on my take with Kelce is if the tight end 2 comes close to Kelce, you're getting that tight end 2 at a fraction of the cost, no matter who it is, even if it's Mark Andrews. That's a glaring issue. Kelce can have an enormous season, and if he stays healthy, he likely will. But if the tight end 2 can come within 10%, within 15%, but at a fraction of the cost, it's a problem for Kelce. Now, single game ceiling, which is something we like to talk about for these deep tournaments. Week 17, you have Kelce there. You pushed him through. Yes, he is the highest single game ceiling for tight ends. But you're giving up a lot. You're giving up one of these elite receivers, elite running backs as well. And I think that's a little too much for me. So Kelce, I'm going to be sitting at that 3%, 4% range on Kelce here. And I wouldn't be too surprised if he ends up slipping a little bit. There's also news of where's D-Hop going to go? If D-Hop ends up in KC, Kelce's got to fall a little bit. And I'd be putting him closer to 9 or 10 at that point. And even then, like, I would want a little discount on him. And let's move on to round 2. So Devonta Adams is at the 12 spot. And guess what, guys? Like Jimmy, it sounds like it's not as bad as the initial report. And if Jimmy plays, Devontae Adams is going to get his. Sure, if you want to wait for that pod where people are letting Devontae Adams slip to 13, 14, 15, I'm scooping. I'm scooping the Adams fall. Let it avalanche right on me. I'm fine with that. I love being at 11 and 12, double tapping these receivers, or you can actually get different. You can go Lamb, right? And then maybe reach up for Nick Chubb. Unique combination, not giving up a whole lot. It's that easy. Adams and Barkley or Lamb and Barkley. Unique combinations because most people are double tapping receiver. Is it a bad thing? Is it a good thing? No, I still like double tapping receiver because I can make my teams different enough. I'm not too worried about the start being chalky. You never have to worry about that. But if you want to be unique and maybe in these tournaments that fill faster, like the first puppy, second puppy's filling pretty quick. I think it's 50% full already. And I'm doing unique combinations at this point. And maybe we can pull up a team later on our most recent one today. We dropped a little nugget on the Twitter machine, and all these nuggets, all this big brain information is going into the Discord, and everyone's chatting it over. We have a really good community on there. I want to thank everyone for joining us in the Discord. Real quick in the chat, ER7 Ben, Jay Fresh, Fantasy Football Garage, Fantasy Dysfunctional, Heart. What's up, guys? Glad you would joining us here. So round 2 starts with Garrett Wilson, goes Amon-Ra, JT, Waddle, and this is a range. You're going to want a piece of everyone in this range. I really don't think there's any bad values. Now, there's players that, okay, they're getting a little expensive. Waddle is getting a little expensive. When we're pushing the wide receiver 2 on a team in front of RB1s, I start to cringe a little bit, but it's the landscape of this year's draft. It's just the landscape of the ADPs. All the wide receivers are being pulled up the board. They're all more expensive. If you don't draft receivers and you go RB, you look at your team and you're like, man, this is kind of gross. Or if you want to go Kelsey, Mahomes, like your wide receivers are pretty gross. You basically have to pick 3 wide receivers in a row at that point, or 2 out of the next 3 rounds, like 100%. So roster construction balance is a little tougher with the wide receivers. Now we can hit some value pockets and we can talk about sleepers, but this is just in general my strategy here. Round 2. Pollard. I like Tony Pollard, but Jerry's crazy. Jerry's crazy. Does Jerry bring someone in to pair up with Pollard? We'll see. He's returning from injury. He's getting pricey too. I do like that these QBs are falling. So BBM strategy, like you can wait on QB. I just got Mahomes at 24 today. Jalen Hurts falling to 27. These QBs are falling. So when we think about this tournament, it's going to be open for months. You're scooping value that wasn't allowed at the beginning of the tournament because these QBs were all priced in the second round. So this is actually an advantage to drafting in June that we should be using. Select these QBs in the third round. It's very similar to their price from last season now. When Josh Allen was going on that 2-3 turn, you were going Justin Jefferson, Josh Allen, or you picking Cup, whatever it was last year. And that's a huge advantage for advance rates. And now we're getting back to those prices. But as these elite QBs, these 3 elite QBs are starting to fall, so does Trevor Lawrence. So does, Justin Herbert. All these QBs in the middle rounds, I believe, have to fall as well. You're starting to see that a little bit with Burrow starting to settle into a new ADP. And that's important. That's important. And Trevor Lawrence actually a common faller nowadays. So I think you want to spread your exposures in this range. Yes, Waddle scares me a little bit here. Devonta Smith, another wide receiver 2 on the team. But I do have a tier break off after Higgins. In between Higgins and DK, I believe there is a tier break off there. So the round 2 ends here with Jalen Hurts at 24. I don't mind Jalen Hurts at the 2-3 turn at all. Mahomes, I think it might be a little early for him. I see him slipping, so I'll just select him with that falling value because I think in the future, that's where they're going to be drafted. And we're always trying to stay ahead of ADPs on this channel. I think that's super, super important. Peanut Butter Waivers, what's up, my man? Welcome. Welcome. Round 3. Now, this is where it gets a little testy. Derrick Henry. He's here and he's rising. He just rose above Josh Allen from yesterday to today. He's got a juicy Houston matchup twice in the playoffs and on week 17 where all the big money is. Super important. But at the end of the day, I think there's still time for some positive news to come out of camp about Tajay Spears, and it already has. And I've seen Derrick Henry fall after Josh Jacobs and Stevenson have been selected. So I've been scooping him in that spot. But I like these 3 running backs. Like when we're talking about from a value standpoint, like you want to go these 3 running backs versus DK. Like here's the deal. Seattle, Geno Smith is either going to be the MVP this season or the Seattle pass catchers ADPs are wrong. You know, which one is it? And I know these receivers are being pulled up the board. They're all more expensive this year. So that's something to keep in mind. You even see Ridley sneaking up the board because teams have to select receivers, especially when they start with a QB, a running back, double running back, or Kelsey, that they're in these spots and they're pulling up these receivers in these spots. So it might be more of you're not paying for their value, but you're paying for their single game ceiling. And when I'm in this range, I just really like even after DK's off and it's Hall, Andrews, Ridley, Jackson, Debo, Cooper, ETN, I really gravitate towards Mark Andrews and Lamar's being the 2 highest upside players that I want on my team. ETN's been a common faller, which is actually really nice. I like him starting around ADP 40, 41 in that range. I think that's where he should settle. And we're going to get some positive news out of Tank Bigsby this offseason, I project. And then I will scoop the falling ETN in those rooms gladly. Maybe a quick pause on Amari Cooper with the D-Hop news. Just Cleveland is in the cards, right? If Cleveland's in the cards, that's enough for me to just pause on Amari Cooper. Maybe I drop him down a few spots and I'm drafting Debo more confidently in this situation if I need a receiver. Stevenson. No Damian Harris. They bring in James Robinson, a highly inefficient running back from a yards per carry perspective, but another season removed from the Achilles injury. Pierre Strong Jr. is there, but they only gave him 10 carries last year, even after Damian Harris got hurt. I like Stevenson. I mean, I think he's relatively safe in a run-first offense in New England. He finished as RB11 last year. He's going off the board as RB10, but I think it's incredibly safe. And who's to say that he can't finish as a top 5 running back? I think it's in the realm of possibilities. So that's my thoughts on this range here. Breece Hall, I think we can wait for news on how he's doing. I don't think he's going to rise 8 picks even if we get positive news. He might rise 4 picks, but that's not a big deal. So I don't feel like I need to really assume the liability, assume the risk of picking like 10, 15%, not 10, like 15% Breece Hall. I'll have my 8% right now, but I don't think there's any reason to really overdo it because even with positive news, he's not going to rise that far. That's my opinion. And here we go, D-Hop. D-Hop starts the 4th round. And with D-Hop coming off the board as wide receiver 19, there are multiple places he can land, which can not only help him, but some can hurt him. And let's talk about the ones that'll help first because it's just way more fun. Buffalo, crying for a wide receiver 2 on the team. They drafted Kincaid. They don't really add anyone at the wide receiver position besides like free agency. And those are like Hardy, and it's not anything that's going to be scary. Kincaid might be able to find his way into 15% of the target share, but Gabe Davis, Diggs, Knox. This is what you're looking at for Buffalo. They definitely need a receiver. This will rise Hopkins' ADP. Another one is Casey. And this is the best landing spot for D-Hop. If he goes to Casey, he's going to rise maybe a full round. I would put him in this DK range, 100% in the DK range. And it's tough, right? You have him visiting Tennessee, and these reports come out. Oh, he's visiting Tennessee, and everyone's like, oh, he should go to the 5th round now. Great. If you're going to let D-Hop fall, where I don't really think there's too many spots that are really bad for his ADP. He already said he wants to play for a good quarterback, and he wants to win. Is that the Titans? I don't know. If it is the Titans, maybe Ryan Tannehill plays the whole season, and Ryan Tannehill is the best value in this year's draft. So D-Hop, super interesting pick here. We see Keenan Allen rising a ton since Best Ball Mania opened. But again, a lot of these receivers, like we said, are being pulled up the board. Najee Harris, super safe in this range. I like ETN after Najee Harris is gone. Just a personal preference. I have Najee above ETN. And we made this pick, 3 weeks ago in the Dalmatian 101, the single entry, when we had these two on the board. We did go Najee over ETN. And it looks like it's trending this way. So that's a little big brain nugget there, a little projection, a little tap on the shoulder, nothing crazy. Christian Watson, again, you're paying for his single game ceiling. I like Christian Watson. You have to mix him in my opinion. Gibbs is going to be my sort of red alarm in this range. And this kind of goes back to our high stakes drafts. In our high stakes drafts, Gibbs went consistently in the mid 40s after these receivers were off the board. Mid 40s and sometimes falling to 47, 48. It's about the latest I've seen him, but really never at ADP in the high stakes drafts. And I've done about 10 of them at this point. Keenan Allen, like we said, he's being steamed up the board. He's like a cash game guy, in my opinion. He's really just going to be the floor play, cash game guy, steady receiver. I'm not selecting him as my 4th receiver typically on the team. If I already have 3 receivers before this, I'll go Mike Williams. I just think he has a better chance to spike into the lineup. But that's gonna come down to personal preference. I like Mike Williams' spike potential. Single game ceiling is definitely higher, and that's what I strive for in these deep field tournaments where you need to separate yourself. Drake London, mixing them in, 100%. Fields, Joe Burrow, Terry McLaurin, DJ Moore. You have to mix all these guys in. You really do. Let's go to the next round, round 5. Starts with Christian Kirk, and Christian Kirk's been a riser as well. I bet Kirk and DJ Moore eventually flip-flop. So Kirk will go at the end of the 4th. DJ Moore will start off the beginning of the 5th round. But DJ Moore is not going to slip too much further than this. He really, I think, will stand pretty tall in this range because you need to put a receiver here somewhere, right? You need receivers here. And this is what happens, is the receivers get pulled up, especially in these spots where there's holes. So Christian Kirk starts it off, and then TJ Hawk. I like this range to take a shot on a tight end, TJ Hawkinson or George Kittle. You can pair them. One of the benefits is you just need one more tight end, really. If you're selecting a tight end up until I put it at Juwan Johnson, I think that's the perfect tight end too to pair with like a Hawkinson or Kittle or a tight end that goes before that. I can stop at 2 tight ends and be very confident with those 2. Walker, common faller, but he's really not falling much further than this. It's been a few weeks now, and his ADP settled right next to Aaron Jones, something we did project was going to happen a month ago. Joe Mixon him in. I mean, if he ends up in Cincy, yeah, he's going to rise. He's going to rise over these 2. But maybe I put him ahead of Gibbs, but I'm not putting him ahead of Harris. I'm taking my shots on Chase Brown on the back end, kind of correlating my takes that way. I'm going to want that 8% Mixon. I'm not personally going super heavy on him because I got my shares before. So at pick 54, I don't mind if my shares come down because we were getting him at 65, 68, 70 at the beginning of the BBM. So if a new tournament opens, maybe I'd be more apt to mix him in some more. Like I wouldn't mind getting 10%, but because I know where his starting ADP was, that is in the back of my head for BBM, knowing that teams got him around a round and a half later pretty consistently. I think that does give you a disadvantage. Justin Herbert, he could be a really good value this year. Played the season mostly hurt last year. If he can get closer to 2021 stats. And I read something like he only played 17% of his snaps with both Keenan Allen and Mike Williams on the field. It was something close to 17%. That's extremely low. It's absolutely insane. If he can get his pass catchers back, Eckler's returning. If his pass catchers can stay healthy, they add Quentin Johnson in the NFL draft. They're giving him the weapons he needs to put up a top 5 QB season, and this would be a very good value on Herbert if that happens. And now this one's going to be for Drew in the Discord, my man. Chris Godwin and Michael Pittman. Let's start with Pittman. We'll ease into it. Michael Pittman is the typical cash game floor guy, sort of like a younger Keenan Allen, right? But he has a rookie QB instead. If he's going to be your number 2, your number 3 on your team at the wide receiver position, sure. But Pittman finishes a top 12 receiver 2 times and a top 24 receiver 5 times in 16 games. He's consistent. He doesn't really spike into, the top 12 as a wide receiver 1 often. His highest finish was wide receiver 5 last season in half-point PPR. Now you're bringing in a rookie. It's just sort of a little downhill for him. I think he fits on some roster constructions. If you want to take a shot on Indy's offense elevating under Anthony Richardson, sure. Go ahead and do that. I don't mind that at all. And then Chris Godwin. Sort of like Pittman, great floor. I'd say he's more elite than Pittman. Godwin finished as a top 12 receiver 3 times and as a top 24 receiver 5 times in 15 games. Problem is, glaring issue, the GOAT is gone. He's going to be playing with either Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask. Pick your poison, most likely. Tampa Bay is not going to be a good team this year. It's not going to be a good team. So, yes, they might be playing from behind, but I expect just like a ton of 5 for 64 yards type games from Godwin. I think he gets lucky if he scores more than 5 touchdowns this season, in my opinion. Another year removed from injury, which is a positive, but again, no Brady. And they were super, super pass heavy last year. And what Godwin did with those targets from Brady, like if the targets go down, right? And maybe they don't. Let's say they stay the same. Let's say he gets the same amount of targets, around 150 this season, and that was in 15 games. Are the targets going to be as worthy as Tom Brady targets, which were very catchable balls, higher chance plays, right? So that kind of worries me as well with Godwin. But then going in the same range, Brandon Ayuk sneakily finishes as wide receiver 15 last year, going off the board as wide receiver 30. I have Ayuk in my mind ranked closer to Kirk. This is the range where Ayuk should be going, in my opinion. So I'm super high on Ayuk this year. And then you have the rookie going right after him. Again, is Geno Smith going to be the MVP, or is one of these Seattle pass catchers ADPs wrong, or multiple of them, are they wrong? They also bring in Zach Charbonnet, helps the offense potentially get in the red zone more, but target-wise, pass catching running back, it worries me a little bit. It does worry me because they're expensive. All the Seattle pass catchers ADPs are super expensive. So who's wrong? Which one is wrong? Unless Geno Smith is the MVP this season, throws for 5,000 yards. Round 6, Start off with Miles Sanders, and I like this range. Round 6 is not anywhere. I don't think there's anyone in here that you really have to fade. It goes from Miles Sanders all the way to Kadarius Toney. Now, Toney, maybe I'm fading a little bit, pairing him with my Cincy stacks or pairing him with Mahomes. But other than that, really kind of avoiding Toney. If D-Hop goes to KC, geez, we'll have to re-look at where we would place Toney, but he would have to fall. He would have to fall more than a round, in my opinion. I already have him as that gadget player in my head that's not going to have a huge target share of the offense. So maybe it really doesn't affect his upside at all. It does. It does. This is expensive. You're basically, you're hoping that he gets 20% of the target share at this pick. I just don't really see it happening. And then you assume the risk if D-Hop goes there. So Tyler Lockett going basically back-to-back with JSN. Now, Tyler Lockett is someone that doesn't need a whole ton of volume in order to spike into your lineup. He finishes wide receiver 13 last year. He played just 16 games. That's absolutely insane. He finished as wide receiver 17 at a fantasy points per game basis, minimum 9 games. Sorry, Michael Thomas. So just to put it in context, right? Because data can be skewed to make you believe basically just about anything. So here's both numbers: wide receiver 13 and wide receiver 17 points per game basis. I think that's important to have both of those out there. He's going off the board as wide receiver 32, though. So in my mind, still a clear value. Yes, he's another year older. His body's still young. The guy doesn't take hits. And he had a 74% completion rate with Geno Smith. So the connection was there. It was there. It was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. Has the touchdown upside, important in half-point PPR. He can just spike into your lineup super easily. And even they bring in JSN. His ADP still rose after that happened. That's the crazy thing. I was so excited. I'm like, they drafted JSN. Lockett's going to drop to the 80s, and I'm going to have 70% Tyler Lockett. Didn't happen. Market's too smart. Now, Marquise Brown. This one's interesting. This one's very, very interesting. I have a tough time telling people to draft a lot of Marquise Brown in this range. Part of it is because of where his ADP was at the start of BBM. The other part of it is, what's the health of Kyler Murray? He tore his ACL late in December. Arizona releases D-Hop. Vegas has Arizona at a 4.5 win total over under for the season. Vegas doesn't really expect Kyler to be playing this year or to at least come back relatively early into the season. So my next question is, if Arizona starts off 1-3, 1-4, 0-4, does Kyler play? Because if Kyler doesn't play, Marquise Brown is not going to pay out this ADP. So even if Kyler does play, they're not going to rush him back. And I've scooped Marquise Brown at a much cost-friendly price. So it just makes it tough for me to now love Marquise Brown in this range. I just find it difficult to rely on 37-year-old Colt McCoy. So I think we can wait for some news on Kyler before we start slamming Marquise Brown in this range still, because yes, would he still rise? He would probably rise a full round if we found out today that Kyler was the starting QB week 1. He would rise a full round into this Christian Kirk range. Maybe he jumps Christian Kirk right here at 49. But we don't have that. And I don't think that's going to happen. Colt McCoy, ER7 says, if Kyler doesn't play, helps the running backs? Yes. Please go back under the games that Colt McCoy played last year and go look at James Conner's stat line. He checks down the ball to the running backs. So I absolutely love James Conner this season. I like mixing in Keontae Ingram as well at the end there. And let's go to Deontay Johnson, another floor guy, right? Cash game guy. In 13 games under Pickett, he posted 0 games above 15 points. But he has a great floor, and I expect him to score more than 0 touchdowns this year. Hot take of the year. Thank you. Suitable on your rosters for construction as like your wide receiver 3 or your wide receiver 4 on the team. I'm not making him my wide receiver 5 if you're going to do that. And even as your wide receiver 4, depending on if you went, your first 3 picks as wide receivers, I don't really like him for that construction either. I'd rather go George Pickens. I just think he has a higher ceiling, single game ceiling, be able to spike into the lineup. But if you need consistency, I don't think you can really go wrong with Deontay Johnson as like your wide receiver 3 on your team. Another good range to take tight ends. I take shots on these tight ends all the time. Pitts and Goddard. Again, you only need 2 tight ends depending on your second tight end. Let's put it in my mind through Chiggy. If I go Pitts and Goddard with any other tight end through Chiggy, I'm confident just settling with just the 2. I think that gives you, again, it gives you the advantage of freeing up a roster spot on the back end of drafts, and that could be used on a running back. Maybe Dwayne McBride. Do it. All right. Anyone else in this range? Mike Evans, again, kind of the same scares as Chris Godwin with just QB play, really. And then where's this range end? It ends with Tony. I like Burks. I think we should be smashing Burks ahead of Addison, ahead of Deontay Johnson. But again, it's a few picks in ADP. I think Burks fits in more roster constructions than Deontay Johnson and Addison, in my opinion. But we are off to round 7. And we're going to be headlined by George Pickens as the 39th wide receiver off the board, followed by Swift, Madison, Minnesota Madison, Dalvin Cook going directly next to him, brothers, and Cam Akers. If I had to pick one of these running backs, I am going Cam Akers a lot of the time. I really don't like the Madison pick, and I'm correlating it on the back end, right? I'm not just saying, okay, I'm not going to pick any Minnesota running backs. I'm correlating my picks on the back end with Dwayne McBride, who I think bell cow size, yards after contact, half-point PPR type guy who I think should earn a role in the red zone. Yes, Ty Chandler's there. I have my chips in McBride's corner, though. Jahan Dotson really sticks out in this range. Jahan Dotson. And then Gabe Davis against the Pats week 17 gets a little testy, in my opinion. But I like the Gabe Davis pick. Perfect tournament play. Just high upside. Single game ceiling is very, very high. That's what you're looking for. It's what you're looking for in these tournaments. Brandon Cooks. I can't stop clicking Brandon Cooks. And a lot of it is because of that week 17 matchup against Detroit in a dome. I love that game. I am on that game in probably 70% of my lineups. I have a piece of that game somewhere, somehow. Brandon Cooks is just, he produces everywhere he goes, right? Every single place he lands. He's a best ball guy. He's going to spike into your lineup. I think he's the perfect pick in this range as well. And the round ends with Deshaun Watson. If Cleveland scores DeAndre Hopkins, the only winner in that receiver core, add the tight end in there, Njoku, the only winner is Deshaun Watson. If Hopkins goes to Cleveland, Amari Cooper has to fall. DeAndre Hopkins likely has to fall a little bit, but he'll probably stay in the same range. Njoku has to fall. And I love Njoku. I have a ton of Njoku. So anywhere but Cleveland for the pound, please. But Deshaun Watson would be an instant riser. Shit. Where would you put him if they would just have so many weapons. Elijah Moore also would have to fall. So, man, he would rise. He would rise very, very far and fast. So I've been scooping him a little bit as of late. I just think that's smart to sort of hedge your bets. I don't care if it's a naked Deshaun Watson at this point. No massage. There's going to be so many pass catchers there. DPJ filling in as well, that I think he'll be able to have those massive spike weeks without elevating another single receiver. Now, to raise your upside, sure, you want to grab a piece of the offense. Always looking to do that, but I don't think it's completely necessary with the Russian quarterback. Jahan Dotson, Gabe Davis, Darren Waller, I like taking shots on. This is a good range. I really do like this range. Swift is probably my least favorite in this range, for reasons being his highest upside is reliant on a Rashad Penny injury. Philly doesn't really check the ball down all that much to the running backs. There's 4 goddamn running backs here, and that's not even counting Jalen Hurts. So super busy. We'll sort of see what kind of role he works out. I think he's going in the right range. I just have Cam Akers ahead of him. I'd probably rather Isaiah Pacheco instead of Swift as well. But that's just my personal take. Casey does bring in Jerick McKinnon, who does hurt Pacheco's red zone role, and it's shown in his ADP since BBM has opened. So something to note there. Into round 8. 3, 4, 5. So it stops with Cook. Okay. White, Bateman, Connor, Montgomery, Flowers, Elijah Moore, Javonte Williams, Thomas, Ingram, Richardson, Cortland Sutton, and James Cook. I think this is where the money starts being made, or this is where people start making mistakes. And I have some landmines in this zone. One of them is going to be Javonte Williams. I just really don't like the knee injury. I don't like even all the more. Now they're talking about potential Dalvin Cook landing spot. That is not a good sign. That is not a good sign. P. Ryan also has like a 650 rushing yards over under on Underdog. So, I mean, seems a little high to me, even if Javonte Williams doesn't play. But that's scary. That's very scary. I like White in this range. I'm going to be mixing White in. Bateman, I like in this range. Connor definitely sticks out, in my opinion. Could be a mega riser. Now, if Kyler plays at the end of the season, it's probably the highest upside for Connor. It's probably the highest upside for Marquise Brown. The worry is if they just sit out Kyler because they're tanking, we could be in that scenario. And Cleveland, I'm sort of pausing on the Cleveland pass catchers until we get more certainty about D-Hop's landing spot. And I'm just on the hashtag really never Michael Thomas. But I correlate that on the back end with I'm on every other pass catcher in New Orleans. So I'm not just taking this bet that Michael Thomas fails, but I have no one else in the offense. Someone needs to score points, right? So I love Juwan Johnson. I love Rashid Shaheed. We've been touting him since the big board opened, and he was going as pick 200 and something for a week. But yeah, I can't push the Michael Thomas chatter. It might be for some people. It's not for me. Evan Ingram, going to be mixing him in this range. Anthony Richardson's been falling a little bit, but I think he belongs in this range close to Tua, close to Dak. And that's sort of where we're seeing Tua and Dak are going right here. I wouldn't be surprised if he falls behind them. And we'll get to Tua in a second. But James Cook, I don't love it. I really don't love it. I think A.J. Dillon has a pretty good chance to outscore James Cook this year. It's just the red zone role is what worries me the most for half-point PPR. And Damian Harris is there. You have Josh Allen, who's going to be stealing carries at the goal line. It's just, I think it's a little worrisome, his role. Just adding a lot of running backs. A lot of running backs and a lot of red zone running backs. And I mean, Josh Allen's the vulture of all vultures. Cortland Sutton, I like mixing him in. I like mixing him in with the Chargers stacks for week 17 correlation. Not super heavy on him. In this range, I really like Bateman, Connor, Flowers, Evan Ingram, Richardson. Those are my clicks in this range. And if we go into round 9, the last round we're going to cover today before we maybe pop on for a draft, and we'll do the next 9 rounds on a later date. It starts off with Jameson Williams, JMO, and it goes to Pat Frymuth. So with JMO, I like him in certain roster constructions, and I've seen people sort of make the mistake as him being your fourth wide receiver on the team. I think that's thin. I think it's a little thin. I'd like him to be my wide receiver 5 on most constructions, unless your first 3 picks were wide receivers, then sure, he can be your wide receiver 4. But this is all stuff that I already pre-think about. My brain's already wired in these ways where it's like draft capital calculator up here, right? So there you can justify just about any pick, but I think there are spots that it makes more sense. Tua, going off the board is QB 12 on a points per game basis. We removed all of the games Tua got a concussion and played, 1 quarter or like 8 plays, 1 play, whatever it was. And we removed those games. And from a points per game basis, Tua was QB 7 last year. Little value here going as QB 12. One of my favorite clicks in this range, along with Dak, because again, I love the week 17 matchup against Detroit in a dome. And I'm heavy on the pass catchers. If you're heavy on the pass catchers, correlate your takes. You should have the QB. Alvin Kamara, I'm sort of fading in this range. I got him at pick 125 the other day. So, I mean, yeah, we'll scoop him there. We'll scoop him if he falls a good amount, but 6-game suspension potential. I don't love it. I don't love it for pick 100. Uncertain role. They draft a running back in Kendrick Miller. They bring in Jamal Williams. Again, the vulture, the ultimate vulture in Jamal Williams at the 1-yard line. Juju Smith-Schuster, I think you have to mix him in here because there's no goddamn wide receivers in this range. And again, week 17 against Buffalo. We'll see. We'll see. I don't necessarily love the game. I don't hate the game. I think we can correlate it with Juju just fine. I don't think it's egregious at all. And then we go with Zach Charbonnet. What do you want Zach Charbonnet's role to be with Kenneth Walker there, with them with 3 heavy pass catchers, busy offense? You're basically hoping, in my opinion, and you've heard me say this before, you're hoping Zach Charbonnet is A.J. Dillon. And this might surprise you, but for the same price, going 2 picks after, you can get A.J. Dillon. Like, you're hoping Zach Charbonnet is A.J. Dillon, but you can select A.J. Dillon in that same range. Don't you just go A.J. Dillon? I go A.J. Dillon. That's my click. That's my click here. I think they're going to lean on the run again under Love. Should have a really good rushing attack this season. And Pirine. I think you have to fade right now until we get more certainty about Dalvin Cook. We got to check yourself. This is the market checkup, and Pirine you have to pause on. Pause on Pirine. Hashtag that. Tag me in it on Twitter. Pause on Pirine. Just for now. But I think the talks of Denver bringing in Dalvin are very telling about Javonte Williams' health. Now, pick 105 for handcuff. I never loved this range, but again, I've been drafting since just after the Super Bowl when drafts opened, and Pirine was going in that 165, 170 range, and we were slamming Pirine in. 105, shit. Give me Brian Robinson. In my opinion, if we're thinking about the end of the season, we're thinking about playoff weeks, which are the only things that matter for tournament play. Javonte Williams should be back by the playoffs. Who's going to be the better play? I mean, my clicks, Brian Robinson in this range. Sure, Pirine, maybe you can project Javonte Williams gets re-injured or whatever it may be, but I think it's pretty gross, and it's not good news that Dalvin, there's talks about him going to Denver, so I think we just pause on Pirine. Kirk Cousins, I don't absolutely love him in this range. I think one of the biggest mistakes is people are just auto-clicking Cousins. because he falls to the ADP that goes with Justin Jefferson, right? So if the Justin Jefferson team is picking Kirk Cousins, it's a very high percent of the time. I'm going to do probably something different. It's too close. It's too close to Tua. It's 7 picks away from Tua. It's 8 picks away from Dak. Yes, they bring in another weapon. I could see it, but I don't love the click. I guess that's because I'm a Chase over Justin Jefferson type guy at the 1 spot. But I'm going to mix in Kirk here. I'll grab my 8% Kirk. I just find myself doing this all the time. I love drafting running backs in this range. I like Njoku a lot. Again, I think we have to pause on Njoku too with the D-Hop news. He could really kill some red zone roll for Njoku. That being said, he should still get his, and he has a lower ceiling that he has to hit at the tight end position versus, Amari Cooper or even Elijah Moore, who's going in this range at receiver. The threshold is it's not as high for tight ends. So I think that's a little nugget there. Slight pause in Njoku, my most drafted player. When I heard the news that D-Hop is looking at Cleveland, man, it's not great. It's not great. So maybe for now, we bump Njoku right behind Freiermuth, but that's sort of where I have him. And Pat Freiermuth, one of my favorite tight ends for a value perspective going into the big board, but then they draft Darnell Washington. They bring in Allen Robinson. The thing is, it's more heads in the red zone. If Darnell Washington works out a red zone role and his nickname's the 7th lineman, maybe it's just blocking, right? So we could be looking into this too much, but he didn't get knocked down at all. And I was really looking forward to him getting in, just falling around, a half a round. Give me a half round. It didn't happen. He actually rose a little bit. Half point PPR, Kenny Pickett, really low touchdown rate. You bring in 2 pass catchers, potential red zone targets. I'm torn with Pat Freiermuth. In my opinion, I want that around that 8% of him. He's not someone I'm going to be fading. But I'd be very curious on your guys' thoughts on Freiermuth. That's just sort of where I'm at with him. Yeah. And let's pull up something so we pulled a very interesting player into a spot in a draft today. Those are the values for the first 9 rounds. We'll do the second 9 at a later date on another video. It was the Puppy 2. And I think this is very different, right? We had Justin Jefferson. We go off at 1. We get Mahomes to fall 4 picks at 24. And we bring DeAndre Hopkins into the 1 spot. Haven't seen anyone do this. Just big brain on the spot, clicked. This dude went Joe Burrow at 26. Just saw that. Max Payne, not great. If DeAndre Hopkins does go to KC and this happens after the Puppy 2 fills, this will be unique. Now, it won't be unique because I just aired it to the world. Luckily, we only have 493 subscribers. By the way, 500 subscriber giveaway coming soon. Roger Goodell, Clown Nose Towel. All you have to do is comment after the video is posted. Join the Discord for more info. Plug. But this team was unbelievable. We scooped so many values. We made it a 1 QB team because I just felt like that was going to give us the best chances to not only advance, but give us the highest upside as well. Those QBs on the back end, if you have to rely on them to provide a spike week in the playoffs, you're probably not going to move on anyways. Mahomes has to be the guy. So we get him at pick 24. We get Sanders, a full round of value. We get James Conner, 9 picks after. We get David Montgomery, 10 picks after. Gibson, Tajay Spears, even 10 picks after. And Gus Edwards. Dude, I'm going to need to order bigger spoons for the house because we were scooping this draft. And now you're going to see something from my next trick. Absolutely disgusting. Close your eyes. This is not for all viewers. 18 plus, please. George Kittle, 14 picks after ADP. Is this going to be thrown out? I'm just looking at this now. Is this team going to be thrown out? Dolchich, and we go a last round, last pick, Jake Ferguson. JJ, D-Hop, Drake London even a little after. Kirk, Rashee Rice, we had to reach up for him, which I'm fine with. Nico Collins, Jaden Reed to correlate with the Minnesota game. And again, Rashid Rice. That spike week guy. Absolutely. Absolutely. So guys, I'm curious if you think there are any takes on players that you don't agree with, drop them in the comments after the video is posted. We're going to be drafting after this on the Discord. I appreciate everyone coming out tonight. I hope you liked the video. Drop a like on the way out if you learned something today, and we'll see you soon. Pounders.